Hi there! As a MEM student and BLM employee at the Colorado State Office, I'm excited to discuss my MEM project, Engaging Diverse Publics in the Era of Streamlined NEPA, co-developing resources and best practices for the Bureau of Land Management. This first-of-its-kind project attempts to help land management agencies, like the BLM, maximize the incorporation of diverse voices in the NEPA process for more informed decision-making when they now have less time and space to do so. NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970, is a foundational environmental law that is triggered whenever a federal action has the potential to impact the human and natural environment. It was one of the first U.S. policies to provide a democratic platform for the public to voice their concerns about the impact of government actions on the environment. While both environmental assessments and environmental impact statements are the main tools to conduct the NEPA process, I focus on public participation within environmental assessments, or EAs, in this project. EAs are conducted when a project will likely not have a significant environmental impact, and for many agencies, soliciting public participation is optional. For example, the BLM put out a public scoping announcement for the Rabbit Valley Camping and Fee System EA, which the public responded to with comments that the BLM used to inform their analyses where appropriate. This is a very simplified example of how this can happen. Many EAs do not go beyond posting documents to their online NEPA register, or e-planning, for public review, while others include public meetings and use more creative methods to solicit public input. According to BLM Colorado staff, this discretionary process often depends on the level of interest anticipated, how controversial the project will be, staff members' overall workload, and the degree to which staff are focusing on checking the boxes or going above and beyond. According to one of the BLM employees I interviewed for this project, if you look at NEPA as just checking the box, I jump through the hoop. I'm following regulation on the act, and I'm following policy, and there's not that relationship part. There's not that genuine your heart's in it. And I don't think it works, because when you read NEPA, there's more to that act than just the act. In a similar vein, my project digs deeper to gain an understanding of how this relationship operates from the BLM's perspective. While public participation is at NEPA's core, I argue it's just as important to understand the perspectives of the individual government employees listening from behind the scenes to better understand their own interpretations of NEPA. Their perspectives can speak to how they value participation in the NEPA process and how they're adjusting practices to streamlining. In 2018, general streamlining guidelines trickled down from an executive order to agencies like the BLM to implement on the ground. One of the major concerns of strict streamlining guidelines is that they may shortcut public participation by allowing less time and fewer pages to explore informed, diverse public comment, though very little is known about whether this has been the case. My MEM project attempted to fill this gap by asking how the BLM can better facilitate and incorporate meaningful public participation across diverse local and general audiences, while continuing to meet departmental and BLM-specific NEPA streamlining goals. To address this question, I first wanted to get a sense of what current data could tell us about how streamlining might be impacting public participation in Colorado. To do this, I analyzed 165 publicly available EAs that began in fiscal years 2018 and 2019. This 2-year period roughly straddled the time frame when streamlining guidelines went into effect, so we can get an early idea if there have been any major differences pre- and post-streamlining. I looked for variables to compare, such as page length, time elapsed, types of external scoping methods used, the number of submissions, or comments and letters received, and the number of issues analyzed. I wanted to highlight a couple interesting things here from my data that doesn't directly relate to public participation at first glance. While the number of pages without appendices increased only slightly over time, the average number of pages with appendices actually increased by 45% after streamlining. This finding suggests that people may be meeting new, stricter page limits by including more in the appendices, which doesn't come as a huge shock. I speak from experience here. Days elapsed from start to finish of an EA went down as predicted, but the fiscal year 2019 value is still greater than the 180-day, or roughly 6-month maximum for even a complex EA under streamlining. It looks like more work needs to be done here, which may be tricky when fitting everything else in, including various public scoping methods. Interestingly, the data I collected on public participation did not support my initial assumptions that the number of public comments and letters received and the number of days given for formal scoping and comment periods would decrease. Instead, they increased by almost half. This is an important observation for BLM Colorado leadership to be aware of, as many were likely under the impression that it was the opposite with less time to fit everything in. It would be interesting to see if this trend continues, especially considering from the last slide that BLM Colorado still has a lot to do in meeting streamlined timelines. After collecting most of my baseline data, I headed out to field offices across the state to conduct interviews with 7 field managers and 7 planning and environmental coordinators to record their thoughts about public participation in streamlining. These perspectives represented all 3 BLM Colorado districts with field offices that handle varying resource concerns. For example, while some field offices like the Grand Junction Field Office experience more controversial NEPA processes around recreation and tourism, others like the Little Snake Field Office in Craig have a larger focus on their resource extractive economy that supports local communities. Finally, I received help to transcribe all 14 interviews so that I could then code them for different thoughts or perspectives, tagged as phrases or sentences in the document, that I grouped together within nodes. These nodes allow me to identify common perspectives, track them across interviews, and quantify common themes. For example, one sentence could fit in the node, public misunderstanding of the NEPA process, while a phrase later in the interview could indicate that it was difficult or impossible to meet streamlining timelines. These added up over time and across interviews as I collected a total of 28 nodes. I used direct suggestions from interviewees, reinforced by the nodes I developed, to propose a toolkit that can help NEPA specialists and managers with their concerns related to general public participation issues in streamlining. These tools are currently outlined in a white paper that I plan to distribute to BLM staff throughout Colorado. While I don't have time to highlight them all here, I will give you some examples. For instance, several individuals expressed concerns about the unintended impacts of streamlining, like the one captured here, which states, "We have to do a lot more upfront work before we reach out to the public." I don't know if that's a bad thing, but it certainly does change when we actually go out to the public and the amount of work that we do between the steps of the NEPA process. Common notes like difficult or unable to meet streamlining timelines, changes in participation response due to streamlining, and issues with general methods or timing reinforce the idea that it would be helpful to have a tool that provided standardized guidelines for picking appropriate participation methods, along with suggested timelines to help incorporate methods while meeting streamlining goals. This tool would be especially helpful if the upward trend in participation that I depicted earlier continues. An example of a more public-facing tool originated from something that had already been used at one of the field offices. Several interviewees echoed the feelings expressed in this quote, stating, "The saddest part of my job has always been when some regular member of the public, they hear about a project and they write a nice letter, they engage, they're wanting to help, but for whatever reason it misses the boat." This sentiment aligns with notes like giving the public a platform to voice their concerns, informed decision-making, and most of all, a misunderstanding of the NEPA process, when the public fails to provide substantive comments. These perspectives support the use of pre-formatted comment response forms, especially for more complex NEPA documents, to help guide the public. One of the most rewarding aspects of this project was to break through any notion that these field offices were simply unvaried bureaucratic institutions and hear individual perspectives on the public participation process and streamlining. While the process often dictates how planners and managers take in comments from the public and respond, there is still some discretion on how to go about soliciting this feedback and later incorporate them within NEPA documents that can be based on available time and resources, and streamlining can put a strain on this availability. It will be important to reference this kind of insight to use the BLM's limited time and resources efficiently to continuously adapt to streamlining through an evolving set of tools. Further, this response was supported by individual professional reviews and opinions often backed by years, sometimes decades of experience that can help lead the agency forward. All of them echoed the importance of state and national level tools to help them carry out their work. While my work has been useful in identifying BLM perceptions around public participation and suggesting potential tools for BLM staff that can help as streamlining continues, there's more work to be done to understand how to prioritize tools and the appropriate scale and resources needed to successfully implement some of them. You may also have noticed the lack of public input on these proposed tools for better facilitating public participation. This can be a project by itself. There's more room for potential amendment projects down the line to continue to explore various aspects around this evolving topic. I especially gained an appreciation for how much these public servants care about the opportunity for the public to contribute to the NEPA process and their expressed professional responsibilities to the public. These insights from NEPA practitioners will continue to be invaluable for me as an emerging leader in policy development and application in the ever-evolving field of environmental management. I have many wonderful people to thank in the BLM Colorado community and MEM community, along with friends and family that have helped challenge me to develop the best project possible, and many resources at hand that made this possible. Thank you so much for listening.